The recreations of the sister location levels in FNAF Help Wanted 2 were some of my favorite levels in the game, especially Funtime Freddy's and Circus Baby's levels, but there's a decent amount of stuff in these levels to theorize about, including Circus Baby and her connections or non-connections to the Mimic, the idea of someone watching us, and the physical connections to different areas of the series. In the last theory, we talked a lot about the protagonist and the Candy Cadet stories and the very nature of the game, but in this video, I want to focus on the sister location minigames and their connections and details that I think are worth talking about. Much of this video will be going over FNAF's chip theory and what I personally think about it and why, and I'll also talk about stuff like the constant reappearances of the phrase "they are watching" on the cameras and more. Sister location in this game is very interesting, and I think you guys will be interested. So without further ado, let's get started. A theory that has been popularized by John from FNAF has been that the Mimic virus came from Circus Baby, so let's go over the evidence for that. The theory mostly comes from the belief that Edwin parallels Henry, and Henry in the books made the robot Charlie's, and the fourth one is Circus Baby. Baby is Henry's creation in the trilogy, and the Mimic is Edwin's creation in the Tales books, and so in the games, they're probably connected. Baby has the ability to mimic voices as she copies Elizabeth's voice in the Entered Private Room level from Sister Location. The epilogues also have the Mimic get spring-locked inside a Jester suit, which Baby supposedly is, and in Help Wanted 2, we replace the chip in Helpy's head with a chip that looks just like the one we get from Baby in Sister Location, and Helpy has constantly been the representation of the Mimic in Ruin and Help Wanted 2. I know I'm probably missing some stuff, but that's the bulk of the evidence. I should clarify that while I don't agree with this theory, I do think John is a cool dude and his theories are very interesting. I always have to say that or else I'll get attacked in the comments for explaining why I disagree with him, but that's gonna happen regardless, so let's just talk about it. You guys know by now that I believe the Tales from the Pizzaplex books are in the games timeline, which I talked about in a video dedicated to that just a few months ago, and another more recent video on the novellas in general. And I think it's pretty clear that if the Tales books are in the games, the Mimic could simply not have come from Circus Baby, as it would just come from the animatronic. But aside from just that, I don't think Edwin is meant to parallel Henry at all. While yes, there's some similarities, I don't think they're strong enough to solidly connect the two. That I won't get too deep in though, as whether they're parallels or not, that doesn't really change anything, because even if they parallel each other, doesn't mean they don't coexist. We already know they do coexist, as whether Tales and the games were the same universe or not, FNAF 6 still happened in the Tales universe, meaning Henry exists anyway, and is separate from Edwin. That's something a lot of people forget about Tales. A parallel does not have to equate an alternate universe. It can, but it does not have to. A couple pieces of evidence connecting Baby and the Mimic kinda just aren't true though. For example, Baby does not have the ability to mimic voices. Funtime Freddy does, and Funtime Freddy is part of Entered. It's not Baby that can mimic voices, it's Funtime Freddy. On top of that, even if Baby could mimic voices, I am 100% certain that animatronics can speak in the voice of the spirit that possesses them. Case in point, the puppet.
Seeing you powerless is like music to me.
Circus Baby is also not a jester. While jesters and clowns are related and similar in some ways, they aren't the same, and they look completely different. Baby is just a clown, not a jester, so that doesn't mean anything. But the chip is actually a really good piece of evidence. It took a bit of thinking to actually come up with something else that this could possibly mean, but I think what I've come up with is kinda simple and makes sense. See, yes, the chip is the same one that Circus Baby has, but so is the one that we take out of Helpy's head. The chip we put in and the chip we take out are the same chip. The only difference being that the one we take out is red, and that's because it's corrupted, which is why it needs to be replaced. What seems more likely to me is that all the Fazbear chips just look like this. And I also think that the chip is something that simply exists as a power source or something, because Sister Location does not make a point that this thing is important. Instead, it makes a point that it is a complete lie. A lot of people get mad at me for saying the chip means nothing, because apparently that's a lazy, baseless argument, but it's really not. It's literally what Sister Location actually tells us. Circus Baby is trying to lull us into a false sense of security. She literally betrays us after this. She tells us to take the card and put it into hand unit, which keep in mind, we do not hold. He's most likely on our back or belt or something like that. She tells us that she can continue to speak to us if we do this, but when we go back out into Funtime Auditorium, she does continue to speak to us, but if we go off the path she tells us to, we get killed by Entered. The game clearly spells out for us that Entered is the one talking this whole time, not Circus Baby through the chip. That's because Circus Baby's endoskeleton is already wrapped up in Entered. It seems like we're talking to her the whole time in parts and service, but her endoskeleton is not in her body. She's empty, and if you look closely in the background, you can see the wires of Entered. The only reason the chip exists is to allow Baby to talk to us without us getting suspicious of her, because in reality, Entered is behind us watching our every move and killing us if we don't listen to where we're told to go. He's behind us, talking to us, and making us think the voice is coming out of hand unit, but instead it's just coming from Entered himself. The chip means nothing. It was never meant to be be anything. It doesn't contain Circus Baby's program because she took that with her and entered. The chip was probably a power source, but since Baby's endoskeleton, the thing that actually controls her body, was gone, the chip no longer did anything. I do think the chip in Help Wanted 2 is a good piece of evidence to begin with, but it more likely just indicates that Helpy is broken and that we have to fix him, and that's all. Baby being the Mimic just doesn't really work with what I find to be much more likely. I don't really know exactly why Helpy would be seen escaping the fire in the drawing behind us in that minigame, but there's other things that could mean, especially considering Helpy was literally in the room with us during the fire and there was no way out, meaning it kinda can't be literal. It could just be the character of Helpy surviving himself, or it could be Fazbear Entertainment somehow surviving, or hell, even Michael surviving. There's a lot of different things it could mean, and I don't think Baby being the Mimic is one of the things it is trying to convey. Speaking of Baby probably not being the Mimic, let's talk about Baby herself and her minigame in Help Wanted 2, because I actually find it quite interesting. I've talked a few times about how I think that Help Wanted 2 is a VR simulation made to train employees and find which jobs for Fazbear Entertainment we would be best at. Not only because that's what seems to be indicated with the intro, but also because we can't be able to just teleport everywhere, we open up files to do levels, and Mystic Hippo tells us to look at our hands, which are virtual hands with or without the mask on. I suspect that it's similar in nature to the first FNAF VR game and that Fazbear Entertainment used the Mimic as a shortcut for a lot of the stuff in it. And I think that because the Mimic seems to have basically taken over the whole game, with Glitchtrap appearing all over the place, and the fact that our player character is literally trapped in the game like under construction and drowning. What's interesting about this is the constant reappearance of the phrase "they are watching" in the sister location levels, including Baby's level. I and many others were really curious when we saw that in the glitches on the camera, but what does it mean? Well, there's two ideas I can see working. The first idea is that it can connect with Fazbear Entertainment themselves watching us play the game, whether to see what our skills are for the original purpose of the game, or to see us as we are trapped in the game and observing what we are doing. But the other option is that this is actually referring to Vanessa and Gregory. That option makes a bit more sense to me, as Vanessa seems to be very clearly watching to try and destroy the Mimic given that she's helping us do so, and I think that this line can make sense for her. I'm not 100% sure though, but what about Baby's minigame specifically? Circus Baby's minigame at the end of the sister location set of minigames is probably one of the best and most interesting minigames in the entire game. Not only is the area really dark and eerie, but the level contains 3 different fun and pretty stressful minigames, and the end of the minigame is one of the single scariest and coolest moments in the entire series. But there's a few small details that I noticed in this level that caught my interest. One of Baby's lines in this level is,
"I like it here. It's safe. Safe forever."
Now the reason this caught my interest is the fact that Circus Baby in sister location hates this facility. She hates being trapped, and the whole point of her game is her trying to get out. So why does she suddenly like it in this game? She shouldn't. Then at the end, Baby offers us ice cream, and when that happened, I honestly expected her to eat us with her stomach, but nope, she didn't. But the weird thing about that is that based on everything we know about her, she should've. She's made to lure people in with ice cream and then snatch them up into their stomach with her claw when no one is looking, but she doesn't. Then, right at the end, she says, "Time to clock out," which obviously is because this is a job interview with her testing our skills at these minigames, but if you really think about it, that's what this whole game has been about. The whole game has been about testing our skills to see what role we're best at for the Pizzaplex. But what's more is that on the wall in the Princess Quest room is a poster that says, "Clocking out already." Again, this is referring to a job, but the fact that the poster says this and Baby says this, basically referring to the same thing, is pretty interesting. But what interests me the most is Baby not killing us and saying she likes it here. Another thing is that Baby actively endorses the controlled shocks against the plushies, and her characterization throughout the series is very much against them. Sure, it's on the plushies and not her, but it is a bit weird. These 3 things directly contradict Baby's behavior and characterization. In multiple ways, Baby is just not acting like Baby. The way I interpret this is that this is not the actual Baby. Instead, it's possible that the Mimic had to recreate Baby for the level, but did so while using a very limited amount of information that didn't reveal that much about what Baby was actually like, in which case, it would also disprove the idea of Baby being the Mimic. I do find it really interesting though, because if it's not intentional that Baby isn't acting right, that's kind of a big oversight. Either way though, I mentioned the line of "time to clock out" from Baby earlier and how that could connect with the "clocking out already" line from the poster about Vanny. I'm not exactly sure if this connection is intentional, or if it's connecting this version of Baby to the Mimic recreating her, or if it's connecting Baby to Vanny, or maybe none of them, I don't know. But the last thing I want to talk about is the Funtime Freddy breaker room level. There are 5 switches that we need to use to reactivate power throughout the facility. We see the switches actually have labels on them as well, but 2 of these caught my eye. One of them is named ? Which seems to indicate it's something secret, possibly relating to the observation rooms and Didophobia. But there's also one labeled Pizza World. The weird thing about this is that sister location takes place in Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental. Circus Baby's Pizza World, the restaurant, the one that Elizabeth died at, is separate from the location in sister location, of course being an actual restaurant rather than an underground rental facility. But this game seems to be indicating that the power to the Pizza World restaurant is controlled from the rental facility, indicating that Circus Baby's Pizza World is also on top of Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental. At this point, this one location is kind of cluttered, kind of storing most of the locations in the series, including the Afton House, Fredbear's Family Diner, which also probably becomes FNAF 6, and Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental is also of course here, as well as Circus Baby's Pizza World and the Plush Trap Hallway and the FNAF 4 Gameplay House. And if Fredbear's really is FNAF 6, then Security Breach is also here. There's just a lot of stuff in this one area, and it's kind of cool, but it is also a bit cluttered. Either way, though, it's pretty interesting. And what's more is that in Dance With Me, Circus Baby's Pizza World is said to have a big red door, just like Fredbear's and FNAF 6 have. While that Circus Baby's Pizza World location probably isn't the same building as the one that Elizabeth died at, it could be meant to indicate something. So if Baby's and Fredbear's are around the same place and both have a big red door, is it possible that Fredbear's also became Circus Baby's Pizza World before FNAF 6? That would indicate that Elizabeth must have died at some point after the bite victim, which has some interesting implications, though many people already believe that. Who knows for certain, but it's really interesting to think about. But that's everything I wanted to talk about for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want to, and stay tuned for more theories on the way in the future. But I will see you all in the next video. Bye, guys!